Good morning. It is Monday, August 17th. It's about 7:30 in the morning. Just stepping out to start my chore, and actually I've been out for about a half hour. I was walking around seeing what was going on. I fed the chickens, and now we're going into what we call the winter garden, or the raised bed garden, or we sometimes call it the experimental garden. So I'm going to do kind of a simple job this morning. Um, So this garden here is all raised beds, um, and it's been an evolution from containers to raised beds. It's an interesting garden because it has a slope naturally. I would guess there's probably, I don't know, maybe an 8 inch to a foot fall from this side to the other. And how big is it? Let's see. That's 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. It's probably about 60 feet. And then it kind of narrows. It's kind of wedge shaped. Anyway, the main beds are using the little stone blocks you can get at like the Home Depot that are designed to do raised beds. They have 4 slots that a 2x4 will fit into, and they're 5.5 inches tall, which matches the height of a 2x6. So when we built them, originally we built them 2 blocks tall, and so that gets you a raised bed of about 11 inches or so off the off your base. Now most vegetables have a root base that doesn't go lower than 8 inches. So with most vegetables, you can grow them in an 8 inch deep pot. Now the roots will spread out to the side. Some vegetables require deeper roots. Like with tomatoes, you want about a 20 inch or so. Um, they can survive in smaller, but if you want them to thrive as best as possible. Now, this first bed that I'm looking at right here, this weekend, we raised it up to 4 blocks tall. The manufacturer doesn't recommend higher than 4 blocks, so that puts it at about 11, about 22 inches up off the ground. The intent is we age. Or and this applies to anybody, I suppose, that then you can garden without necessarily being stooped and bent over in your back. And it also gives you of the greater control of the condition of the soil. So as you condition the soil or you water, then you're keeping it in a closed format. Raised beds also have another really important benefit, and that's that the ground temperature is basically the low nighttime temperature. So let's say it gets to 55 degrees at night and 80 degrees in the day, and that's kind of your sustained temperature. That means the ground is basically about 55 degrees, is a kind of a rule of thumb. With raised beds, the temperature will be warmer. The soil will be warmer. So that's a big issue. Like in the spring, when you buy plants, it'll have the hardiness zone, but it doesn't necessarily have some of the other factors that are involved in when you're planting, and that is the nighttime temperature is important, the soil temperature is important, the ambient or air temperature is important, and different plants are affected differently. So for example, tomatoes and peppers, which originated from South America, and they like it really warm, they do better in a raised bed because the soil tends to be warmer. So having raised beds versus planting in ground can help you mitigate whatever conditions your environment has. And so if you plan accordingly, for example, if you look at like the germination of certain seeds, they'll say on there, don't plant this till ground temperature is 40 degrees or the ground temperature is 50 degrees. You can actually accelerate or plant earlier if you're planting in a raised bed or a container. So that's one of the real benefits of container gardening. And that's why we have 2 separate gardens, one that is basically planted in the ground and one that's planted up higher. So this weekend we raised the first bed. This is the first bed that we did. And when we first moved here the first year, this place where I'm standing, I'm looking at it right now, we had all big containers, and that's where we planted our tomatoes. And now the garden slowly evolved. So the plan with this garden is to get everything up off the ground. Now things cost money. So this bed I'm looking at is 2 8-foot sections. So we're talking about 16 feet, and it's 4 feet wide. So I do all of my beds 4 feet wide because you can comfortably reach in about 2 feet. So if you were to plant a bed that was, say, 5 feet wide, you've got this middle strip that's hard for you to reach, hard for you to weed. So, and then the spacing between beds, I use 3 feet because you can kneel down in 3 feet. So it's they're not too close together. You mean you could plant them, your raised beds, they're only a foot away, but it would be hard to maneuver in that. So the general rule I use, if you go through my gardens, it's 4 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet, where 4 feet is the planting bed, and then 3 feet is the space to walk and to function in between. So we raise this up. Right now, these little blocks cost about $4 because I have 2 8-foot beds, and 8 foot is a nominal size of lumber. That means I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 corner posts. There's 2 in the middle, 2 on each end. So they were $4 each, times 12. So that was about $50 just to get these up. The boards themselves, these are ground contact 2x6s. I think they were about 15. They're 15 or 20. So I had to get, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them. So 11 times 22, you can see that raising this thing up cost me $300. Gardening does not pay off in the short run. Now, these things will last probably 10 to 15 years, maybe longer. And because of the cement boards, or the cement blocks, I mean, they'll last a lifetime. They'll be 50 or 100 years before they're not usable. So we can replace the lumber. So this design is made in such a way that if a board starts rotting out or gets bent or other problems, we can just pull the things out because they're not screwed in. Now, what we do is down the middle of these blocks, we run rebar. Now, I'll take a picture of this thing, and that'll be the root photos, and see what I'm talking about. Now, some people are still worried with ground contact lumber because it has an orange tint to it. Now, before 2003, I think was the year, they used to put creosote in these. And there is some concern, I think rightfully so, that if you use timbers that are soaked in creosote, that can seep into your food, and it can be a carcinogenic. I haven't done a lot of research into it. I know that's the common belief, but I believe it. But it's been over 20 years since you've been able to get, or they put creosote in the kind of landscaping timbers. Now, if you buy railroad ties, and they sell those at like Home Depot and those stores, those do still have that in there. They'll last a lot longer, but you risk contaminating your food supply and potentially affecting your health. So I don't advise it. But there's a lot of people who are very hesitant to even use landscaping timbers because they think it might be hazardous, but I don't believe that. Now, I've lived the last 50 years, and I've seen a lot of things that were guaranteed to be safe, like Teflon, nonstick pans, or like Roundup, that we found are not as safe as the companies led them to be. So what I'm doing right now is, a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, I've told you I oftentimes overplant. So if I want one plant of something, I might plant 3 of them. I explained that that's kind of how the greenhouse runs, which means I sometimes have extras, and I'll just let them grow if I have space for them. If they're on automatic watering systems, there's like zero extra cost for me to do that. But I cleaned out the greenhouse, and I pulled a lot of these herb plants that have been there for a while, And I have what we call the build out shelf that I built this spring. It's right outside the greenhouse. There's actually water here, but I don't have it on a automatic watering system. So I pulled a lot of these plants out, and then I think I went away for the weekend or something like that, and they most of them died. I didn't really have any purpose for them. They were spindly and whatever, but I do have a bias towards preserving as much stuff as I can. Um, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking these dead plants that are up here, and I am throwing their root balls into this bed. So I need, I don't know, I could calculate how many cubic feet of soil here, but like 12 inches. Well, let's do it really quick. So we got 4 times 16. 4 times 16 is 64. Um, that's how many square feet is in this thing, and then let's call it. I don't know. Let's do first. Let's say 12 inches. So you're talking about 64 cubic feet of dirt. So a basic standard size pickup truck will hold about a yard of soil. A yard would be 3 feet by 3 feet, a cubic foot. That's 27 cubic feet. So I'm doing math really quick. Either you don't care, or you're following me. So that means I need to have 2 pickup trucks or 2 big scoops of soil to fill this thing up. And so I have to go, buy that soil and then haul it in and put it in the bed. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking these root balls that are dead, and sometimes if you put a root ball, depending on how woody your plant got, um, they can take a long time to decompose. So if you put them in your compost, you'll find you can open it up 6 months later or a year later, and it's still there. That's true, especially with like tomatoes. Tomatoes can get really big, thick root balls. So I've got a bigger pot here. If they didn't have very deep root structure and the soil is still clean and it doesn't have things in it, I'm putting it in there to reuse. Otherwise, I'm just tossing these root balls straight into uh, this bed. Now, as I build this out, I won't just put soil in here. I will put soil conditioner because this is one of my first beds I built. It's mostly, the soil around here is mostly silt. And silt has tiny particles. In fact, people oftentimes mistake silt for clay because they kind of function the same. Actually, on a nano scale or whatever, silt particles are smaller than clay particles. And part of the reason it binds so is because of the molecular properties of those soil particles. I'm a little bit out of depth here, but that's what I was told when I went to gardener school. So this allows me to recycle stuff. So I'm cleaning up my build out shelf here. I'm reorganizing my pots. I'm throwing these things in. They're going to be covered by at least a foot of soil. And I will also put soil conditioner, which is basically kind of a small, really ground up woody slurry, like I don't know how to explain it, but if you mix that in with clay or silty soils, it helps break up the soil and break up that clumping pattern you get. So I'll put that in. I will also put perlite in here, which is kind of a volcanic rock. It's really lightweight. You see it if you've done any gardening. When you see the little white specks in your potting mix, that's perlite. I buy it, I buy like in great big bags and use it up that way. So I'll mix some of that in. I really like to use, or I have liked to use uh, peat. Peat, and I know when I buy the Miracle-Gro soil, it's got peat in it. I try to not use too much peat because it is a mined resource and it is not renewable, not in our lifespan. So we're using up peat from places like Scotland, that have a lot of it, but it's an organic process to create it. So it works really great for gardens and creating that organic loamy soil. But I use it sparingly, or I don't buy it anymore at all. Um, then as I get closer to the top, because right now what I'm looking at will be below kind of that root line, I will mix compost in here, which I have two sources of compost. One is just my recycled household and garden compost, and the second is my animal manure, especially from the rabbits. So I raise rabbits specifically for their compost. So I'll mix all that in together, and I'll stir it up. And then I think we are going to plant carrots in here in a couple weeks. Now, the place that I buy soil from has two soil mixes, and there's a cheaper one that right now is about, if I buy a truckload, it's about $50 for a yard. And they have another mix that is 110 is their price right now. So that's starting to get a little pricey. But the problem is they started mixing too much gravel into, they use it as a filler. And you might say, well, why do you keep buying stuff from them? That's because they're the ones that are close by. There's not another. There's another one that's a few other additional miles away, but from what I understand, they get their dirt from the same source. So, I'm stuck between buy local, and I think these guys are putting too much gravel in their soil. Gravel doesn't do anything. It's just a bulk out agent that does no benefit for the garden whatsoever. So it only benefits them because they're selling me more weight or volume. That for them, the gravel is basically free, and then for me, it's a detriment because it gets in there and it's in there forever. But you have to make the decisions based on your budget. You can, like anything in this world, you can go really high. You can spend as much as you care to. So we're trying to budget that. But the other thing I want to talk about today in relation to this is closed cycles. Now, our basic model in America today is you're in a linear cycle. So you buy stuff at the grocery store or at the Walmart or the Target. You buy your furniture, you buy your stuff, and then you use it, and then you toss it out. You, as we say, throw it away. And most of it, for most Americans, is going to go to a dumpster. So it's completely linear. It's whatever company is managing your waste is going to take it, and most of it is going to go into a landfill, a big heap that they put everything in, and then they let it decompose. There's really no long-term plan. We try to keep it from polluting groundwater. So sometimes there's big barriers between it and the groundwater, and because people throw all sorts of stuff in there, they throw Freon, they throw anything that you can have, every chemical you have. People pour it down the drain, they put it in the garbage because there's not a lot of other places to do with it. I've been interested in recycling. I try my best to recycle, and I've actually taken several classes on like advanced recycling. But I'll admit to but it sounds like my headset's about to go out. So I think that's all you're going to get for today. We'll talk more about recycling on the next one. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Thanks.